So I bought these pants thinking they would be really fun to wear out or to a dinner party. The only problem with that logic is I don't really go to dinner parties or out, really. I would just rather stay at home and read in my sweats with the dogs around. But it did get me thinking, if I were to go to a dinner party, or better yet, host a dinner party, what books or characters from the books would I invite? What mix of books would make for a really interesting conversation and we'd have a good balance of debate and humor and insight and maybe like a little bit of poetry here and there? There are no poetry books on this list. I do not read poetry. I am not that advanced or that elegant. Despite my pants. Pull up a chair to my imaginary little dinner party. It's gonna be fun, it's probably gonna be weird, and maybe a bit random because that's just how I do things. But I also have to change because I feel like I'm playing dress up, which I almost literally am. All of my jewelry is my mother's jewelry. And if I have lipstick on my teeth, I'm sorry, I don't wear lipstick that often. I guess with this new top, it's more picnic than elegant dinner party, but whatever, I feel better. So the vibe here is like oddball but memorable. We're going for quirky charm and dark humor and quiet wisdom. What other adjective can I put together? You get the idea. It's a mixture of stuff. It'll be fun. Let's go. The first guest is going to be the one who arrives early and helps you set up the table. It's the guest that brings that quiet, kind of comforting energy and probably brought like a homemade sourdough or something for everybody to munch on as I'm inevitably late getting all the food ready. This book doesn't say much, but when it does, instant tears. These Silent Woods by Kimmy Cunningham Grant. I read this a couple of years ago and I was just totally absorbed in the story. I think I read it in an entire day when I was supposed to be working from home. This follows a single father whose name is Cooper. He's raising his daughter Finch in the woods, like off-grid. I believe in the Appalachian wilderness. Cooper is hiding from his past tied to his military history and the mysterious death of his wife and Finch's mother. They have been living more or less contentedly in this little remote cabin, but then soon enough the outside world starts to creep in and you can kind of feel the walls closing in. It starts with a curious neighbor, a missing friend, and then Finch naturally is starting to ask questions. You can feel throughout this book that Cooper's past and his secrets are threatening to unravel this little sanctuary that he's built for Finch and himself. I would describe this book as very quietly absorbing. It's a story about parenthood and love and the lengths that we go to protect the ones we love and the limits sometimes of that love. She'll probably want to leave as soon as possible when things start getting rowdy, but she'll stay to be polite. Okay, you know it's my video because, or if you've watched any of my other videos, you've got to know what's coming next. We have our glamorous, chaotic friend who probably overshares after having too much wine. She's late, she's hilarious, she's probably not okay, but she's the life of the party and everyone is too polite to ask what she does for work. I'm physically incapable of not talking about this book. I've talked about this book at least 3 times already, but very briefly. In this story by Ruthie Thorpe, Margo is a freshman in college when at the beginning of the book she learns that she is pregnant from an affair that she's been having with her English literature professor who is married. Margo has to navigate the choppy waters of single motherhood and the practical aspects of that, specifically like figuring out how she's going to make money because she can't really hold down a traditional job if she's going to embark on this single motherhood journey. She begins an OnlyFans account and learns that she's really good at it because that is the charm of Margo and that is the charm of this book. She's so funny, she's so witty, she's so charming, and she kind of falls ass backward into everything she does, but in a good way. And she's also navigating her own kind of fraught relationships with her parents at the same time. This is a layered coming of age story about independence, choice, and staying true to who you are. And I love it, and I will not shut up about it. Please read it. The next one, I don't have the physical copy because I gave it to a friend of mine, and that dirty little rat hasn't read it yet. But it is our beautiful enigma who no one can quite figure out, named Piranesi, which is a fantasy novel by Susanna Clarke that came out a few years ago. Piranesi comes in with like a gauzy caftan, sort of cultish vibes, right? She speaks in metaphors, and halfway through dinner just leaves the table and we find her wandering through the garden talking to herself. In the book, we're following our main character whose name is Piranesi. He lives in this vast labyrinth, maze-like house filled with statues and tides and all manner of mysterious objects. He keeps meticulous records of his surroundings and his interactions with the only other person that he knows, who is fittingly called the Other. As he uncovers strange clues, the world around him slowly starts to unravel. And that's all you should know if you don't know anything else about this book, because certainly one of the benefits of this book, it's almost a requirement, is that you know nothing about it going into it. I would love to know what my friend thinks about it, because she said she was excited to read it, and, you know, it's just crickets since I sent it over to her. Next on my list is another author whose books I mention ad nauseum, you could argue, fairly. And that is, let's call him the storyteller who commands the table. That's backwards. David Sedaris. I don't know if these are all the books that I have, and actually the book that I wanted to talk about today, I don't seem to have a copy of. I think I gave that one to a friend too. David Sedaris is going to be that guest who tells one funny story after another and includes details that are like kind of graphic, kind of make you uncomfortable, and you probably shouldn't laugh at them, but you do anyway, because they're just so freaking funny. He's also like low-key judging what everybody's doing or saying or wearing at the table, but in a good, endearing way. The book I don't have with me that I wanted to talk about is called Diabetes with Owls. It's a 2013 essay collection. It's classic Sedaris. It's sharp, it's witty, it's funny, it's absurd, it's heartfelt, it's biting. It's giving Stefan from Saturday Night Live. In this one, as in most of his books, he's reflecting on everything from travel misadventures to his childhood oddities to his reflections on modern love and his own relationships. Signature wit of David Sedaris is very much on display in this book. The title comes from one of the pieces where he's imagining writing essays from the perspective of talking animals, including, you guessed it, an owl with diabetes. So it's wonderful and it's weird in the best David Sedaris way. Okay, they can go back on their little home now. All right, next we have our grumpy neighbor who has a heart of gold. A Man Called Uva by Frederick Bachman. He complains about the food. He insists it was better in Sweden. But at the end of the night, he's gonna fix my wonky front gate. He'll leave with 3 new best friends who he pretends that he hates, but secretly he's just delighted. I just read Bachman's newest book, which is called My Friends, and I enjoyed it. I'll talk about it in my June reading recap, but I read this one a few years. Actually, I listened to it on audiobook, and I don't know, maybe it's cheesy, but I loved it. I thought it was so good. I sobbed at the end of it. It was very kind of what I'm starting to associate as classic Bachman, which is it's going to be heartfelt, earnest, like almost bordering, and there's a fly. Oh, classic Bachman. Heartfelt, sincere, bordering on cheesy, but it's just too endearing that, you know, even cynical people will enjoy reading these books, I think. In this one, it's a very heartwarming novel about a grumpy old man named Uva. He's a widower, kind of becoming reclusive in the wake of his wife's death. A very lively new neighbor and her very charming family move in next door to him or close by. They sort of stumble unintentionally into his world. Very, very heartwarming, very cozy. makes you grateful for the people who are in your life. Okay. I have to have notes, okay? I just gotta do it. Oh. I just finished this one. I'm doing a vlog, which I think I will mix in with my reading recap because I don't know that I have, doesn't matter. I'm doing a vlog, and part of the vlog I just finished this book. So this is Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Caitlin Doughty, I think is how you say her last name. And she is my death positive truth teller who still brings dessert. She walks in wearing vintage black velvet. She's cool, kinda gothy vibes, but she's compassionate, and she also has a great playlist for us. She tells stories about crematoriums, but she somehow makes everyone laugh while at the same time thinking about their own mortality. Smoke Gets in Your Eyes is Caitlin Doughty's memoir about her time working in a crematorium, and as she is very young, entering what she describes as the death industry. She's very fascinated by death due to an experience that she had as a young girl. It's not in a morbid or creepy way, and a lot of the work of this book is trying to dispel that connection that society, specifically Western society, makes between death as like hush hush, we don't talk about this, or it's creepy or scary, etc., and what it really is, which is a fact of life. She's really pulling back the curtain on the funeral industry. And what I really like about this book is how she is blending personal stories with anecdotes about other cultures and their belief systems, their interactions with death, and the rituals around dying and saying goodbye to our loved ones. It is surprisingly warm, occasionally graphic, but really funny and deeply human. I think it will make you reconsider any discomfort that you might have with death. And I personally enjoyed her frankness about everything. For some reason, I was under the impression that this book just came out, but that is highly untrue. I think it came out 10 years ago or something. And apparently, Caitlin Doughty, some people don't like her. I have not investigated why. I found this to be informative, but the best part is that it's just really funny in kind of the dark humor way that I appreciate, very similar to David Sedaris. I mean, I think that they probably would get along. Super good and kind of short. I could have read it in a day, but I stretched it out because I just did. There's not always a reason for everything. The next one is one that I also just finished, and it is Our Evenings by Alan Hollinghurst. This is our guest who talks about love like it's a tragedy. He's dashing, he sips red wine very slowly. You can tell that he has a past that maybe haunts him a little bit, but he is so charming and is just regaling us with stories about the theatre. And he's British, so, automatically points. This story follows David Wynn, who is a gay, biracial actor living in post-war Britain. We're following him as he goes from adolescence in, I think, the 1960s all the way through pretty much present day Brexit, and I think it even goes, it goes all the way up to COVID. This is an examination of race, class, and sexuality. Very much a character-driven story, but the historical events kind of move us along in time. They're not the focus of the book. They more serve as markers of the passage of time as he is getting older. But this is really focused on David and his experiences that are very personal to him, obviously. In my opinion, a masterclass. That was very awkward. This is a masterclass in show don't tell. But I'll go deeper into it probably in my next video, or maybe not, I don't know. But I loved spending time with this novel. It's elegant, and I would say this is a comforting companion. You can take your time with it, and you can just sort of sit in the silence with this book. All right, my next one, The Historical Heavyweight with Cunning Wit. This is the Wolf Hall trilogy, also known as the Thomas Cromwell trilogy by Hilary Mantel. I'm just going to talk about Wolf Hall. And I'll just put these books back on their little Wolf Hall shelf. Okay, we probably have too many heavy weights at this table, but that's why Margo's here, right? This book, I would describe our character as intimidatingly brilliant. It doesn't speak much, but when it does, everyone is listening. And maybe that's because we're all just trying to figure out what it's saying. I don't mean that in a bad way. I liked this book. I read it a few years ago. This was a beloved book by YouTuber Sunbeams Jess, who I've talked about before on this channel. And she was so passionate about this book that I was influenced to try to read it. It was a challenge for me, I'm not gonna lie. But I was really glad that I attempted it, and then I was committed to finishing the whole trilogy. So this is the first one. This one is set in 1520s and 1530s, and it follows the rise of Thomas Cromwell. The novel focuses on Cromwell's machinations as he's navigating the political landscape of Tudor England, specifically his role in orchestrating the downfall of Anne Boleyn and the king's divorce from Catherine of Aragon. These are not spoilers because, 1500s, and like I said, it's just history. Fictionalized, sure, but the fictional part comes because Mantell is juxtaposing the historical events against Cromwell's inner monologue, his internal conflicts, which we gain an insight into because of how the narrative structure is laid out in this book. And on that point, I would say this is a very well-designed, character-driven investigation, I would call it, into the person of Thomas Cromwell, while keeping in mind that it's fictional. But the biggest challenge for me really was that narrative structure, because Mantell, for reasons that I'm sure that she has them, but I occasionally got frustrated before I got used to it, she uses the word he, and you don't always know who he means. Like, is he Cromwell? Is he the king? Is he some random other person? You do get used to it, but if you're not accustomed to that, it can be a little bit of a learning curve. I was very proud of myself for finishing this book and then going on and reading the trilogy. My favorite of this series is actually the second one, which is Bring Up the Bodies. And then Holy Mother of God, the last one, was a slog. I'm sorry, it was. I get the sense sometimes that editors are afraid to edit, like do their jobs, when they're working with somebody who is as lauded as Hilary Mantel, which she is. But yeah, that book, it was a struggle. It took me a very long time to finish it. So we're only inviting Wolf Hall, and I mean, whatever. You get the point. I like to sneak these books in because it just gives me another chance to talk about them. This is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, and I'm calling Station 11 the one who quietly rescues our dinner conversation after it gets too heavy. At our dinner party, it could probably get a little bit heavy, a little bit bleak. Station 11 is just quiet optimism, where we talk about the importance of survival and art and how we can find beauty even in the most grim circumstances. Station 11 is Mandel's post-apocalyptic novel where she's weaving together several different storylines before, during, and after a global flu pandemic wipes out most of the world's population. The story spans several decades, focusing on specific characters, including Kirsten Redmond, who is a child actor when we meet her, and then further on in the book, she is an actress with the Traveling Symphony, which is a collection of different disparate people who all have one thing in common, which is they are either musicians or actors, and they travel around the ravaged country performing music and Shakespeare to the survivors or the people who've been born during the apocalypse. We also have Jeevan, who is a former paparazzo turned paramedic, I believe, at the beginning of the book, although I don't know if he actually was one. Either way, you get the idea. We've got a lot of different people. Everyone is navigating the collapse of civilization, and in that process, themes of memory, survival, art, and human connections unfold. The novel is, as I said, non-linear. We're jumping between timelines and between characters throughout the book. That structure contributes to this kind of haunting but hopeful aura that the book presents. And it really leaves the impression that art and storytelling persists even in the darkest of times. It manages to get all of these beautiful themes across without ever, in my opinion, becoming cheesy or overwrought or histrionic or something. It's just a gorgeously woven together tale. The next one is also a book I don't have the copy of, but that one I can't blame on my friend. I've called this one The Intense Guest Who Drops a Bombshell Halfway Through the Night. That's probably not accurate because I'm talking about The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. This story, this guest, so to speak, is quiet and polite at first, but their story, when they tell it, grabs the whole room by the throat, and everybody is silent for a full minute after they finish telling it. This is a very powerful, haunting novel based on a real life, I think it's called the Dozier School for Boys in Florida. It follows Elwood Curtis, who is a black teenager living in 1960s Jim Crow. He is sent to a brutal reform school after what can really only be described as a misunderstanding. There he meets Turner, who's a street smart boy. Turner, as opposed to Elwood, has a much more cynical worldview. Their bond and their contrasting beliefs form the emotional core of this story. It's very sparse, but beautiful, and I think haunting is really just like the best word I can use to describe not only the prose but the experience of reading this novel. It's a devastating exploration of injustice and survival, and in this specific case, the lasting scars of institutional abuse. It's a small book, but a huge impact. If this isn't too long already, I'll include the one who couldn't RSVP, our regrets only guest, another rough-edged guest with a heart of gold who just couldn't make it, probably because it was busy cleaning up someone else's mess. I don't have the jacket for this one, but this is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. I just finished King of Ashes, and although I liked that book, and again, I'll talk about it in my June recap, I just always think about Razorblade Tears because it was my first S.A. Cosby, and I just loved it so much. Razorblade Tears would have shown up in like dirty clothes and dusty boots and a great bottle of bourbon or something. Razorblade Tears is a thriller about two men, a black man whose name is Ike and then a white man whose name is Buddy Lee. Their sons were in a relationship together and they were killed. Ike and Buddy Lee form an unlikely alliance to uncover the truth behind the killing, whether it was a murder, which they believe, or something else. But because they believe that it was a murder that was perpetrated against their sons, they join forces to seek vengeance on those people. Both men have fraught relationships with their sons because of their own ingrained prejudices and their own past actions. They're both ex-convicts. S.A. Cosby is a great storyteller because he very effortlessly seems to be able to blend the plot mechanics, moving us along, while also at the same time having our characters on their own arcs of growth or whatever may be. This one is a very well-paced journey into grief, injustice, race, love, and the complexities of fatherhood amidst societal and cultural norms and expectations. So yeah, he didn't RSVP, but we saved him a spot anyway because we always save a spot for these kinds of books, right? 10-ish wildly different guests, one dinner table, maybe 3 existential crises. That's just how I like my reading. I'd probably end up overcooking the food and I'd see Margo next to Uva or something, but the conversation would be unforgettable. Thank you so much for coming to my fake, weird, fantasy, little whacked out tea party vibe thing. It definitely is kind of like making me think about like Mad Hatter Tea Party, right? Like it makes absolutely no sense, but doesn't it though? Thank you so much for watching. I had a great time and I will see you in the next one. Bye.